Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the California State Library's Government Publications section for a special program on Channel Islands National Park with Jasmine Reinhardt from the National Park Service. My name is Emily Blodgett, and I am the host of today's event. I'm a librarian in the Government Publications section at the California State Library. Our moderator, Catherine Wessenfeld, is also a librarian in the Government Publications section. She will be monitoring our Q&A section for any questions you may have, and will read your questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. The California State Library is thrilled to partner with the National Park Service to present today's program. Before we start, I have a bit of housekeeping to go over. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A section. We will answer them at the end of the program. This presentation will be recorded and made available on the California State Library's YouTube channel. We will email the link to everyone who registered. Live transcription is enabled. Click the CC icon to show the captions. If you run into any technical difficulties during the presentation, please put these in the Q&A box and we will troubleshoot. We have added links related to the California State Library and Channel Islands National Park in the chat window. For any state employees without a library card, please consider applying for one through the online application link provided. Our speaker today is Channel Islands National Park Interpretation and Education Program Manager, Jasmine Reinhardt. Jasmine has worked for the National Park Service for 9 years. Before coming to Channel Islands National Park, she worked at Muir Woods National Monument, Alcatraz, the Presidio of San Francisco, Fort Point National Historic Site, and Haleakala National Park in Hawaii. Please join me in welcoming Jasmine. And Jasmine, you can.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And thank you for the warm welcome, Emily. And we're really excited to be partnering with you all to be able to teach folks a little bit more about some of the resources around their state of California. So without further ado, I am going to start sharing. Give me 1 second. But like Emily said, my name is Jasmine Reinhardt. I'm the program manager or chief of interpretation here at Channel Islands National Park. And prior to coming here, I worked at very different places. But I want to start off by just saying something a little bit more personal, that the first time coming here and having the opportunity to work at this park, literally islands off the coast of California. I actually had never heard of the Channel Islands. And since coming here, working here, I've learned, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work with subject matter experts from focusing on all different types of fields. And it's been really a really transformative experience and journey. And I'm really excited to share some of that with you today. Give me one moment. So to our moderators, I'm not sure if you're getting my chat about not being able to share sound on the presentation. So sorry, folks, we're just doing a little bit of troubleshooting in the back end.
We're just going to take a look at that, Jasmine. Hold on 2 seconds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, there, it just prompted. Okay, let's go. All right. So before we get started, I have a question for folks here. And we're going to do a little poll, but the question I have for you, it's going to be a true or false statement. So with the poll that comes up, the question I have for you is, statement is, I knew that Channel Islands National Park existed before I read the announcement for this presentation. We're going to wait a little bit to see the answers that come in. All right, some of them are still coming in. Ooh, we got some good attendance today. I'm feeling really looking forward to this. Okay, got 181, 182. So far, we're seeing a little over 80%, about 83% that you say, yes, I knew about the Channel Islands before reading the announcement for this presentation. We have about 17% of you that say no. So to everyone, especially for those of you who did not know, I really hope you learned something about the islands today. I have a second question for you. So we're going to wrap up this poll. God, and they were starting to come in at like 194. That's awesome. Okay, so my next question for you is, I have visited Channel Islands National Park. Again, if you can mark yes or no. Ooh, this is coming in fast. All right, we're up to 180 now. We have about like an 80-20 split, almost the same amount of responses coming in. Oh, this is very interesting, folks. We're almost seeing like a flip. So about 79, 80% of you have not visited the park, and we have about 20, 21% of you who have. So to everyone, whether you've been here or not, I really hope that that today, again, not only do you learn something interesting, but that you're maybe given information to plan and prepare a visit to come out here. So, okay, before we get started, something that I would like to do is, the park is known for a variety of things, but I want to ground all of us to the cultural significance of these islands. So for the next slide, I'm going to share a short video with you all. And here, I will have you all hear it, and hopefully you can hear the audio.
My name is Julie Tumamayat Stensley. I am an island descendant. My father, Vincent Tumamayat, the son of Cecilio Tumamayat, and the grandson of Juan de Jesus Tumamayat. Our families come from Santa Cruz Island and Santa Rosa Island, from villages such as Shuahil, La Upsh, Nanuani, and Maschal on Santa Cruz, and from the village of Hechaman on Santa Rosa Island. Sahipaka, once upon a time, here on this beautiful island that we call Limu, meaning in the sea. You know it today as Santa Cruz Island. Mother Earth, Hutash, was out here. And as she had created many things here on the island, she thought something was missing. So she went to a very special plant and she gathered some magic seeds. And she threw the seeds out into the earth here on the island. And pretty soon, up from the ground, from this beautiful earth, grew these beautiful people. She gave them many gifts here and showed them how to live happily on this island. Well, her husband, Achuoposh, the sky snake, today we know him as the Milky Way, he wanted to give the people a gift too, so he gave them the gift of fire by shooting a bolt of lightning to the ground. Well, the fires burned hot, and they kept warm with these fires, and they cooked their food. The villages started to grow and be populated with more and more children. Pretty soon, with all the noise from these children, Hutash was annoyed, and she decided that it was time for these people to move on and to move to another place. So she said to herself, I've got to think of some place to put these people, a different place, a place where they could spread out and be very happy. Well, the next morning she gathered all the people up to a very high mountain, Siwot, or as we know it today, Mount Diablo. And as she told the people to look, as they looked up into the sky across the ocean, They saw a beautiful, beautiful rainbow, Wishtoyo. And she told them that that image was a rainbow bridge. And the rainbow bridge was going to take them to a new land that was very large, and they could fill that with people. Well, as people started to climb over the bridge and cross over, many became very dizzy and very frightened because there was a mist and a fog below. They couldn't even see the ocean. Well, as they started falling off, crying out to Hutash for help, she took pity and she changed them and transformed them into dolphins. And that is what we call our brothers and sisters today of the ocean, Alakoi. Those people who crossed over on the bridge went to a place called Tismahu, where it steams out. Today we know that place is Carpinteria, and the people came off that rainbow bridge and spread out into all these beautiful places on our mainland. And that is all.
So that story is one that I feel is most powerful coming from someone who is Chumash. And Julie Timamaya does a beautiful job at talking about the beginning and the connection between the Chumash people on the islands and then also on the mainland. And what you're seeing now in front of you is you're seeing a Google image of there's blue representing the ocean with some topography representing the depths. Along the top, you see the mainland California coast, and then you see some islands hovering south in the distance. And I want to start off by saying that the Channel Islands is actually an archipelago of 8 islands. They're off the coast of Southern California, and they're the traditional homelands of the Chumash and the Gabrielino Tongva people. Their families and ancestors have lived on these islands for thousands of years, since time immemorial, managing its natural bounty for food, medicine, and other resources. However, colonization from Spanish, Mexicans, and finally Americans claimed this land and often violently removing Native people, the process from their homes. However, Chumash and other indigenous people, they remain. They are still here today, maintaining strong cultural and spiritual connections to their homelands, to these islands. And these connections are really critical to the dimension of the human history of this land. So I invite you to take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that have brought us here to where we are today. So a question that we get commonly asked is, how did the Chumash get to the islands? And to answer that question, I'm going to give you a little bit of a visualization. So it is theorized that people likely arrived via the kelp highway, traveling along an ecosystem that was mostly continuous, if not exactly finding the same species along the way. They would have been able to make, minor modifications to their technology instead of constantly having to stop and figure out how to deal with radical changes in weather, topography, food resources. And on the kelp highway, it's theorized that the ground that the Chumash people arrived in was actually one large landmass. And that's kind of the representation that you're seeing in front of you right now. You have, again, the ocean represented in blue, and what the land formation that was exposed would have looked like. And right here, we're looking at the Northern Channel Islands specifically. And in just in a moment, I'll go ahead and tell you what those names are. But on this giant landmass, it's important to note that archaeological sites are distributed across the Park Islands throughout the coastal interior locations, but also in some areas that are today underwater. So until approximately about 9,000 years before present, as I said, the Northern Islands, so starting from the far right at Acapa, Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, and San Miguel, formed one single island. It was known as like a big island, a super island called Santa Rosa. And ultimately, it was separated by the rising sea levels. So Santa Rosa, and again, that's kind of what you're seeing depicted in front of you right now, was only about 6 to 8 kilometers, maybe from the from the shoreline of mainland California to the closest edge of Santa Rosa. And Chumash history goes back again in since time immemorial. In Western concept, we can look at it as over 13,000 years. And they were there, the Chumash were there at the last glacial maximum. So when the last glacial maximum ended and the climate change and the sea levels change. So it is significant to note, and I'm trying to drive in a point here, that the islands were never attached to the mainland. And archaeological sites across the islands that we know and see today provide a lot of that evidence of some of the first people that arrived here via boat. So this next series of slides, it's going to show a little bit of movement, showing how this area slowly changed over time as sea levels began to rise. So after the last glacial maximum, as again, Santa Rosa started separating into pieces. So first we see here is where Anacapa, the island that is presently closest to the mainland, was separated from Santa Rosa. And then Santa Cruz. And then finally Santa Rosa and San Miguel Island. And before the sea level stabilized and left us with the 4 northern islands that we, see today. So we think about it as like that geologic now. It includes the whole European experience of that area as well. So there they are, these islands, tempting people off in the distance, just seeing these land masses hovering. But, now that even though we see them very differently today as these separate land masses, that the story that these islands tell with its history, knowing its history, goes way beyond these 4 separate islands and really goes deeper when we look at that picture as a whole. So Channel Islands National Park is made up of 5 islands. It's made up of the 4 northern islands, which are part of the archipelago that we spoke about, and one of the southern islands, which is off here down in the bottom right-hand corner, called Santa Barbara Island. So this map, it reflects the park boundaries and the present day coastline, and also the coastline of California. And the distance between the mainland and the closest island, Anacapa, today is roughly about 14 miles. And we know, however, that when the Chumash arrived over 13,000 years ago, that distance was only about 4 miles. And it's important to note that Channel Islands is not just the islands itself, but also 1 nautical mile surrounding each island. And that's going to be an important detail that we're going to come back to later. So, we've been talking about Chumash as the earliest inhabitants who relied and used the marine sources and use a lot of the sources here around the islands. Isolated from the mainland, they navigated between the islands and back and forth to the mainland using tamols. And that's what you see in front of you depicted in this picture of people with long paddles with a wooden canoe in water. And a tamol is a plant canoe constructed from redwood logs that moved up and down the coast, and it was held together by yup, which is a glue-like substance made from pine pitch, asphaltum, and the cords were made of plant materials. The tamol ranged from 8 to 30 feet, could have ranged from 8 to 30 feet in length. and held about 3 to 10 people. And shark skin was used for sanding. And there were other natural elements here used for staining. Abalone was used for inlay and embellishment. And the use of the tamale allowed for an elaborate trade network between the islands and the mainland, between native communities and non-native communities. And amongst the island communities themselves, akum or shell bead money was minted by island Chumash using small disc-shaped shells that were from olivella shells. And I'll share a picture in just a moment. The drills were manufactured from chert. The shell bead money was exchanged and mainland villages with mainland villages for resources and manufactured goods that may have not been available on the island. And this is an example of some of that shell bead money. There's some very interesting information here to note that despite the isolated island environment, islanders Chumash were connected to the mainland. They remain connected to the mainland, to other islands through an elaborate trade network, which facilitated the exchange of goods, of ideas, as well as the maintenance of social relations. And in their trade, the Chumash used this currency that we spoke of. And in fact, the word Chumash itself derives from a word that means makers of shell bead money. The names, the term mainland Chumash people might have used to refer to the people who lived on the islands, in the Northern Channel Islands. And this is interesting. So the Chumash shell bead money is one of the earliest known examples of currency, dating back many thousands of years. The island Chumash, as I said, used their money for trading as a form of like monetary means. And the island, these shell beads, this island money that derives specifically from Santa Cruz in many instances, have been found as far east as Oklahoma, which demonstrates that even though the Chumash, again, lived on these islands, I really want to stress they were still connected to the world around them. Okay. So we spoke about that the present day coastline that we see is very different than the coastline, how this area might have looked a very long time ago, right? And it's very interesting to think about, archaeological sites and also archaeological districts. So archaeological sites on the Channel Islands they're generally pretty well preserved due to the lack of ground burrowing animals like gophers and lower level of development in comparison to mainland California. And the significance of these archaeological sites is noted in the park's enabling legislation, highlighting the 13,000 years of human history, including North America's oldest datus human remains. And even though evidence dates back to, as I said, about 13,000 years of human history on the islands, the Chumash believe that these islands have always been their homes and will continue to be their homes. And geology and life are both densely connected to one another, and these connection are apparent in special plants and animals. You're seeing one of the most adorable and cutest things that you may find here on the Channel Islands. Earlier, I stressed that the Channel Islands have never been connected to the mainland. And that's relevant and pertinent to a few of the things that we're going to talk about today. And one of them is this critter that you see right here in front of you. So because the islands have never been connected to the mainland, it has greatly limited the number of species that have reached the shores of the island. So what that means is that many plants and animals have evolved in isolation over the course of a very long time, leading to new species, new subspecies. And sometimes they're different than their mainland counterparts. They sometimes have different, not just appearances, but also different behaviors, characteristics. And the same small populations and limited island inhabitants that regulate many species to rarity also accelerate forms of evolution. And we're going to see that through some of the species that we're going to talk about next, not just through animals, but also in plants too. So some quick cool facts about the critter that you're seeing in front of you. It is the only carnivore unique to California. It's 1/3 smaller than its mainland ancestor, the gray fox. And at 12 to 13 inches in height, only weighs about 4 to 5 pounds. The fox is about the size of a house cat. I would say that there are house cats way bigger than this species that you're looking at in front of you. And environmental and ecological factors such as overcrowding, reduction in predators, food limitations, and other genetic variations could have contributed to the natural selection for making this smaller than its mainland counterpart. It is the largest native terrestrial mammal on the Channel Islands, and some individuals have been known to live up to 15 years. So some of you already may be like saying, I know what this is, I know what this is, I've seen it. This is the island fox. And it is one of the smallest canids in the world. As I said earlier, adults weighing only about 4 pounds, and it is an example of island dwarfism. And a lot of sometimes the Channel Islands is referred to as the Galapagos of North America, and we see many different examples of animals or plants that have evolved in isolation. And over the course of time, some of them get smaller and some of them get larger. That's called a form of gigantism, and we'll see an example of that a little bit later on. But the island fox only occurs in only 6 of California's 8 Channel Islands, so it's not on all of the islands. And each island population is its own unique endemic subspecies. So they're not all the same species. And although foxes have always existed at low populations, 4 island fox subspecies underwent catastrophic declines in the 1990s. Again, although the foxes have always existed at low populations because of this catastrophic decline that that occurred in the 1990s, it catapulted or it started a series of events like a domino effect. So people started noticing that the numbers were quickly declining. And this raised alarm bells where people were trying to figure out what's going on. Why are these numbers declining? And I'm going to give you an example. By 2000, predation on island foxes resulted in population declines to on San Miguel Island, the furthest island. The population declined to only 15 individuals. And then on Santa Rosa Island, the population also got to like 14 or 15, and then less than 80 on Santa Cruz Island. And in 2004, each of the park's island fox subspecies were federally listed as endangered. So one of the first things that, scientists and biologists were trying to figure out, well, what's leading to this decline, right? It's hard to solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is or what is at the root cause of it. So that was a critical first step in identifying what management actions needed to occur on San Miguel Island, Santa Rosa, and Santa Cruz Islands and Channel Islands National Park. The decline was attributed to predation by golden eagles. And this is where that interesting domino effect comes into place. So the presence of non-native ungulates as a food source, in addition to DDT that had been disposed of in the ocean for a very long time, really showed that the cascading effects was not just one problem, it was multiple sources. So, um, so the native eagle of the Channel Islands is the bald eagle. And what they found out is that golden eagles were coming into Channel Islands National Park, pushing away golden eagles, pushing away bald eagles as bald eagle numbers were declining. And that was part of figuring out, well, what's causing this? And if you think about the food chain and the food source, um, bald eagles mainly rely on the marine life to hunt for their food. They get fish from the ocean and they come back, and all of that they ingest also goes into it goes into their body, but it also was starting to impact the quality of the shell of the eggs that they were producing. And that was because the DDT that the fish were exposed to, that the bald eagles were eating. So as bald eagles were, trying to incubate eggs and sit on them, these eggs kept on failing. They kept on cracking and failing. And as, again, those bald eagle numbers started to drop, golden eagles started to come in, which are more territorial, further pushing away the bald eagles. And the way that island foxes evolved, they evolved not having to worry about something coming overhead to attack them. Again, because bald eagles mainly relied on the marine resources to get food, not hunting critters on the land. Whereas the golden eagles that were now coming in, that was very different. Now they were going in to hunt those island foxes, which is something that the island foxes did not really evolve learning how to protect themselves. So they figure out that that was a source of the decline. So one of the things that they started doing is they started to trap and relocate golden eagles from the islands to the mainlands. And then they started reintroducing bald eagles to the island. So that was one of the first steps. And population and mortality are subsequently monitored. Even present day, it has to be ongoing to ensure that the recovery proceeds and that future threats to the island fox are identified if it is identified to be related to eagles. And another major thing that occurred, another challenge, I would say, was figuring out, okay, with some of these islands like San Miguel and Santa Rosa Island, we have 15 foxes left on each island. And remember, each island has its own unique subspecies. So that was another challenge that they had to figure out, how do we move forward? How do we do this? So they started a captive breeding program. Um, and it was a really complicated endeavor, not only because it's remote islands and logistics are always complicated. You have to take all this equipment out there. So some of the challenges, yes, were logistics, making sure staff and partners were trained in proper husbandry, especially for animal captivity, preventing disease outbreaks. One of the other things that they were also doing is trying to make sure that they were breeding the foxes that were on those specific islands that had the best chance for genetic diversity. So it was really this very detailed process. And this is also when the Island Fox Recovery Group was created, which was instrumental in the recovery efforts. So in 2003, the first island foxes were released from captivity back into the wild on Santa Rosa Island. And it's hard not to look at that and be like, oh my gosh, that's so adorable. They're so small. And today we can see what those numbers look like, starting from when the alarm bells rang, um, how 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 the population declined, the severe levels of how dire it got, and in 2003, how those numbers started to go back up. So today we have what's called the Inventory and Monitoring Program. And actually, I'll talk about that in just a moment, but Channel Islands has considered a prototype program for inventory and monitoring that really influenced the rest of the National Park Service, what we call I&M program, inventory and monitoring. So we have an I&M program specifically related to the island fox. And so this is really important. And the reason why it matters for park managers when we look at this data is, people we're looking at the survival rate of the reintroduction of these foxes. It has remained high above 80% on San Miguel and Santa Cruz and has increased in Santa Rosa as well. The excellent reproduction in the wild combined with the high annual survival has allowed recovering island fox populations to continue to increase. And demographic modeling incorporating the population and survival estimates now predicts a very low risk of extinction for that recovery. And then in 2006, the first bald eagle chicks hatched, which was the first time in over 50 years that had occurred on Santa Cruz Island. And again, today we see a program, really a recovery effort that has been really successful. The population has recovered. Population trend and annual survival are still, as I said, monitored annually. And that's to ensure that this recovery continues. It's part of what the park and many of its partners are responsible for continuing to do. And here we see an example of one of our fox text biologists running what we call a fox grid, where they try to find island foxes and get assessments on their health. How are their health doing? They check from fleas, from dental to see if it's male or female, to see if they've produced. And I had the opportunity to join a fox tech on one of these grids and to see the delicacy and how they safely maneuver and handle the animal is really quite extraordinary. And all of this effort represented the fastest successful recovery for any endangered species listed mammal in the United States, which is pretty extraordinary. And like I was saying earlier, the Channel Islands Inventory and Monitoring Program, what we're seeing here is just one example of that. And we really see that in more than one aspect. And the reason why the park and its partners takes inventory and monitoring very seriously is because we have very unique resources here. We have been entrusted to protect them and to restore these places. So we spoke about the island fox, but the Channel Islands are home to nearly 150 endemic species. So endemic, meaning found nowhere else in the world, found in those little respective places. And as we gave the island fox as an example, each population on each island is its own unique subspecies. Another example of that is if we look at the island scrub jay. That is what you see on the far left. You see a bird perched on a branch. It's blue on top, black around the eyes, and white in the belly. That is the island scrub jay. And that island scrub jay is found only on Santa Cruz Island, and it is a form of gigantism, whereas the island fox was a form of island dwarfism. And as I said earlier, some of these species undergo gigantism. So they evolved to be larger after these years of isolation. So the Santa Cruz Island scrub jay is a darker, brighter hue of blue compared to its mainland cousin. And it's also about 1/3 larger than its mainland counterpart. And of the 500 breeding bird species in the continental United States and Canada, it is the only insular endemic land bird species. So fully about 10% of the terrestrial plants and about 30% of the terrestrial animals in the park islands are unique, just to give you an example. Oops, sorry, it jumped ahead. And so that inventory and monitoring program that we were talking about does a lot of work to do annual assessments and surveys of how many of these organisms are doing. However, it's not just on the mainland. It's also underwater. So another one of the inventory and monitoring programs here at Channel Islands is what we call the Kelp Forest Monitoring Program, which was established in 1982 to collect baseline information about the kelp forest ecosystem in the park. And each year the program collects size and abundance. Each year the program collects data in about 70 different categories or taxa, from invertebrates to algae, which all are indicators of health in this type of ecosystem. And the current monitoring protocol that we have was adopted in 1997. And what's very interesting about this data set, it's one of the most complete data sets used from institutions around the world to get an idea of how conditions have changed over time. And the data set that was collected from this kelp forest monitoring program was instrumental in the creation of the marine protected areas that we have here on the islands today. So what you see in front of you now is a map of what I showed earlier. It has the mainland off to the top and the right. It is the ocean represented in this light blue. It has, here you can see 6 of the islands, the 5 national park ones, and you also see St. Nicholas Island a little bit further south. And you see these red and blue blocks kind of jetting out from each of the islands in different directions. And these are different marine reserves or marine protected areas. So in 2003, the State of California Fish and Game Commission established 13 marine protected areas within the state waters of Channel Islands National Park. And in 2006 and 2007, the boundaries of these MPAs were extended to the federal waters of Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. So approximately 21% of the waters within the park and sanctuary are now protected by these MPAs. Marine protected areas. And while most of the waters within the park and the sanctuary are open to state and federally regulated commercial or recreational activities like fishing, the MPAs function more like a marine refuge, if you can think about that, similar to our terrestrial national parks, but underwater. And they're open for public enjoyment of non-consumptive activities like boating, surfing, scuba diving. The islands are a very popular place for that. But fishing and other activities that involve that take aspect are limited in some areas, and then in others entirely prohibited. So no take marine reserves are the primary type of marine protected area in Channel Islands National Park and Marine Sanctuary. And there's a reason why this area is so abundant in life. And it's not just life on the land, it's life underwater. And when we think about not just present day, the communities that live in these surrounding areas, present day and historically, why people came to these areas, the things that they were drawn to. One of the really important things to note is that the life is really abundant underwater, and there's a reason why. So again, we see a different example of a map representing the mainland of California and the 4 northern Channel Islands. And what should be the water, you see different colors. On the right, you see yellow, orange, depicting a warmer a warmer temperature, whereas on the left you see a purple, a dark blue, a light blue, depicting colder temperature. So that area between the islands and the mainland is the Santa Barbara Channel. So the Santa Barbara Channel and the waters surrounding the Channel Islands are some of the most rich, diverse marine environments in the world. And it's because of two converging currents. So San Miguel and Santa Rosa Islands are the two islands on the left, the ones furthest from the mainland, and they're the ones furthest west. And these islands are bathed and are surrounded by the California current, which sweeps and brings in cold water that comes down from Alaska. So again, that represents the cold currents. And as a result, the marine life around those islands resemble life that's found off the coast of Northern California, off the coast of Oregon, and even the state of Washington. And some common species at Channel Islands that are associated with the colder water temperatures include black rockfish, sunflower sea stars, and red abalone. And then we have the Southern California current. And this Southern California current brings in warm water from Baja California and up along the mainland. And what happens is both of these currents converge right around the Channel Islands. And what it does is it swirls and it creates this upwelling of nutrients that moves from the ocean floor up, creating and really giving opportunity for multiple species to thrive in this environment. So this warm water supports biological communities, very similar to what you find in Southern California and down in the northern part of Baja Mexico. And some common species associated with those water warmers are like the Garibaldi fish, the California spiny lobster, yeah, some examples. And well, what that also does is it also brings in residents that come from a variety of places to call Channel Islands their home. So besides the upwelling of nutrients and all of the different variety of fish and species that call these waters their home, it also brings in over 100,000 seals and sea lions. And what we're seeing is it's an area on San Miguel Island, which is one of the furthest ones, called Point Bennett, and it is quite a sight to see. So first, I want to say, the elephant seal is one of our 4 species of pinnipeds, or winged or weathered-footed marine mammals that are commonly sighted here on San Miguel Island. And not only so that's a species that's seen there in this remote island. And this area, Point Bennett, it represents one of the largest congregations of wildlife in the world, with staggering populations that go and beach there. We're talking about 70,000 California sea lions, over 5,000 northern fur seals, 50,000 northern elephant seals, over 1,000 harbor seals. They breed and they pup on this island each year. And the diversity of pinnipeds is part of a larger picture of that biological biodiversity found in the Santa Barbara Channel. And San Miguel Island lies in the area that is more colder water, but still has a little bit of that influence of that warm water current. And those two currents, as we said, they do intermingle, but again, not just in the water, but also with the influence of the species that associate with those waters. So these islands can also bring diversity by providing shelf areas where sunlight can penetrate through the water, and plants such as the giant bladder kelp can really grow. And the dense kelp forests around the islands provide food and shelter for many varieties of plants and animals. And here is some more of those examples of that, just for if anyone is interested in a different representation of those warm currents mixing with these cold currents and the upwelling that occurs. So long and the short, the confluence of these ocean currents and upwelling creates one of the most productive marine environments on Earth, with more than 1,000 species of fish and invertebrate and algae, and 26 species of sea mammals raise their young on these islands, where there is an abundance of food and safe and protection from disturbance. And of course, 26 different species of whales, from humpback whales to the largest mammal, the blue whale. And all of this to really hone in on the fact and really emphasize that half the park is underwater. As I mentioned in the beginning, Channel Islands National Park is not just 5 islands, but it's also the 1 nautical mile that surrounds each of these islands. So, a lot of people, or there are quite a bit of people that are interested that have the opportunity to come and visit Channel Islands National Park. This image that you're seeing is on Anacapa Island. Anacapa Island is made up of 3 separate islets, and you're seeing someone standing in the top right corner in a location called Inspiration Point that truly has a beautifully inspiring view. So even though a lot of park visitors come and they make it to the islands, not everyone has the opportunity to experience what the underwater world looks like. So for those who do have the resources to be able to scuba dive, Channel Islands is renowned for its experience in diving through the kelp forest, where it looks like as the sunlight comes through and hits the kelp, it looks like stained glass. It's really quite beautiful and remarkable. So what the park started doing in the 80s is they launched an underwater live education program that is a live interactive program where people from all over the world can call in and watch our educators, our underwater education rangers, talk to them. Visitors can ask questions directly to them, and the park ranger can respond back. So I'm going to show you just a little snippet of that so you can get an idea of what that looks like.
All right, welcome Ranger Kelly. We have a great class here, 4th graders from Bedell, and we're ready for you.
Fantastic! Well, welcome everybody to this special broadcast of Channel Islands Live. My name, as Ranger Monique said, is Ranger Kelly, or Kelly Moore, and I am a park ranger here at Channel Islands National Park. And today is a very, 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 very special day for us. We are joining 411 other national parks in celebrating 100 years of protecting and sharing our nation's most precious treasures, the national parks. And we are so excited that you've joined us on this very special day. And I'd like to start by welcoming our audiences. We've got a small group here with us on Anacapa Island. I just saw right before I jumped in the water. So welcome everyone topside here on Anacapa. We also have a great group of 4th graders from Santa Paula. They're at our visitor center. Hey, 4th graders, can I get a great hello, Ranger Kelly, on 3? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was very loud. It sounds like you're almost right here with me, under you. And today we are diving.
Sorry, trying to get by. So that is a snippet, an example of what the Channel Islands Live Dive program is. And we're really excited that to say that we will be relaunching it soon. Since 2020, the program took a little bit of a hiatus, and coming back, trying to restart after many of our very fragile audiovisual equipment was exposed to the ocean with not much attendance. It needed a lot of repair, and we are getting so close. It's just here at the horizon that we're hoping to officially restart Channel Islands Live this coming academic school year, something that the park has worked really hard on, as we know that it connects so many people to the park and to a part of the park that most people are not able to get to underwater. So if you're interested in coming out to Channel Islands, how do you do that? What do you do? So I want to help you plan your visit a little bit. So first, we have our official boat concessionaire for transportation that takes visitors out to the national park. They do landing and non-landing trips. What that means is that they take visitors out to the islands, but they also have whale watching trips, wild sighting trips. So that is one of the most common way that people make their journey out to the islands. A lot of people do go by private boat as well. And yeah, so that is a note. So again, that's Island Packers. And when you're on island, there's so many opportunities and different ways to experience all of the unique resources, the terrestrial, the intertidal, so where the land meets the water, and then the marine side as well. So kayaking is a really popular pastime for people to visit the island. We do have an official concessionaire on Santa Cruz Island. They're called the Channel Islands Adventure Company. They do guided kayaking tours. But as I said earlier, people also come out here to dive, whether they're scuba diving or just free diving or snorkeling. That's my thing. I like to float in the water and snorkel. And some of the most clearest, beautiful water I've seen here in California has been here off of the Channel Islands. They're home to some of the largest sea caves in the world. People also come here to experience solitude, to go out for a hike. And one of the most beautiful things that people remark on here is, depending on what island you are, is being able to see the other islands hovering in the distance. And what you see here is someone on Santa Cruz Island, the Cavern Point Trail, and in the background you see Anacapa Island hovering off in the distance. But people also come here to camp and sometimes see the dark skies. You know, it's interesting, Channel Islands has some of the most light polluted night skies in the National Park Service, and also the darkest night skies in the National Park Service. So Anacapa Island, which is more closer to the mainland, which is exposed to the Los Angeles light dome, does not have good visibility of the night sky. But those further islands that we spoke of, Santa Rosa and San Miguel, do have some of the darkest night skies in the National Park Service system. And a visit to Channel Islands is an opportunity to really experience the past and the present, to connect you to a place, to connect you to a story. It's considered a living laboratory and considered a place to really think about and reflect about our place in society, the people who were here before us, who are still amongst us. It is quite a significant place to experience. And we spoke about, you know, the Chumash a lot in the beginning, so I do want to kind of offer a little bit of a bookend here. The removal of the Chumash was part of, as I mentioned earlier, one of the larger oppressive patterns which removed Native people from their homelands across the Americas. And remember, although, you know, many of these peoples were removed from their homelands, like the Chumash and the islands, they are still here today. As I said, maintaining that strong cultural and spiritual connections to these places that they call home. And one way some Chumash maintain their connection to the islands is through a sacred annual event that's called the Tamul Crossing. And it began again in modern history in 2001. And the crossing and the arrival from the mainland to the islands, it represents a sacred pilgrimage for the Chumash people and an opportunity to spend time on their islands with their loved ones to share story, culture, history, joy. And as I said, the Chumash described the annual crossing as a collective practice of community healing. And many feel that they were able to process the trauma surrounded by their own community. But at the end of their visit, the Chumash must still say goodbye to the place that they call home. And the Chumash's enduring connection to the islands does not end at the Tamil crossing. In continuation of their role as the deep time caretakers of these islands, tribal partners are actively involved in co-stewarding park resources. And there's some steps that the park is also taking to be able to really elevate that presence to help people understand the significance of these places. So even though the park was established in 1980, we really strive to preserve and protect that, I would say, that heritage. So an example of the collaboration, the park has worked with the tribe in receiving grants, really trying to understand and bring back those indigenous place names. So here are some of them that we see. And like Santa Cruz Island is known as Limu. And some of the steps that we're taking in the park app that we really encourage people to use to plan their visit and their website. Each island has a section that has a bit, like here in this middle image, that talks specifically about the Chumash place name. And other step that we're taking, we're taking multiple steps, but these are just some, is when people arrive onto the island, they see these signs that says where they're arriving. Well, the signs are being updated. So there's a new one now that instead of saying Scorpion Ranch, it says Channel Islands National Park, Limu, starting with the Chumash name and then saying Scorpion Ranch on Santa Cruz Island, and an example of Santa Barbara Island as well. And these ethnographic island place names aid in the native language revitalization. And I just want to end by saying, earlier Julie Tumamai extensively told us about the Rainbow Bridge. And whenever I personally cross the Santa Barbara Channel, it's common to see hundreds, sometimes thousands of dolphins. And every time I see one, I think about the Rainbow Bridge. I think about the story and consider how even though these islands have never been connected to the mainland, the Chumash still remain connected to the world around them. And we are also connected to these places. So the National Park Service was established to protect and preserve all the resources we discussed today, all the stories that we discussed today, the human history, the native plants, the island moths, as well as the island's unique and fragile resources. And I think it's important to note that by understanding our shared history and these resources, we can avoid hopefully repeating a lot of these past mistakes to help preserve these places for future generations. So I have one last question as we wrap up. It's one last poll, but now since I've given you a little bit more information, I'm curious, are you interested in planning a trip to the island in the future? Those polls are looking pretty good. And if folks have any questions, again, I highly encourage you to look at those resources. Again, coming out here requires planning, knowing what island you want to go to, knowing what your ability is, right? Do I just want to do a simple walk? Do I want to go on a long hike? Do I want to backpack? Do I want to camp? Some people don't want to do any of that. I've met some people that just go with a beach chair and they just want to be at the beach, and that's okay as well. So I really love these numbers. Thank you all for participating. It's really exciting. I had one last video to share, but we don't have time. So I do want to, so I'm going to skip past it, but just encourage you, if you are planning a trip, please be sure to look at the park website to make sure that you're planning carefully and you're taking mind of something that's called biosecurity, something that we ask visitors as stewards too in helping us protect these islands for future generations is prevent the reintroduction of non-native species. So things people can do before they come out is brush their boots, clean their gear, remove soil, seeds, things um, any type of this foreign like matter material, please be sure that you clean your equipment, shake out that tent before you come to the island. As we said, many of these species have evolved in isolation, and the park has done a really has worked really hard at restoring some of these populations back, and that means really making sure that we all play our role in making sure that we are protecting these places by being biosecure. So with that, I would like to see if folks have any questions.
Yes, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation, Jasmine. And Catherine, did we have any questions come in yet?
Hi, Emily. Hi, Jasmine. Yeah, we did. Jasmine, do you have a few minutes to stay with us and answer questions?
I do.
Okay, great. One of the ones that came in early on was why only 5 of the islands are part of the national park and not all of the Channel Islands.
Oh, that's a really good question. So I would say that, well, first I'd say that the designation of Channel Islands National Park and what is part of the National Park Service boundaries today is very different than when the national park when the park was established. So for example, a nuance, Santa Cruz Island, about 76% of it is owned by the Nature Conservancy, and they are also caretakers of these islands. A few decades ago, they donated or they gave a larger parcel of land over to the National Park Service on Santa Cruz Island or Limu to operate. San Miguel Island is managed by the National Park Service, but owned by the Navy. And some of the other islands have a little bit of that nuance as well. For example, some of the further islands that are part of the southern part of the archipelago are still owned by the Navy. Some of them are a mix of private landowners as well. And so I would say that I think the historical use and the present day use of how people are still using some of these islands today definitely influences why some of the islands are not part of the National Park Service.
Great, thank you. We did have someone that asked about the map you were showing that showed the blue and the red marine protected areas and just what the difference is between the blue and the red marine protected area was on that map.
Oh, I'll have to, there's a link on our website that shows marine protected areas, and I can't remember the color off the top of my head, but so there's different types of marine protected areas that I was talking about earlier. Some are specific no-take zones, and some have some nuance to them. And so it really just depends to that specific marine protected area. And I believe there's, yeah, so I really encourage folks, if you're interested in learning about what the specific nuance of each are, to visit the park website. Also, the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary also has that information, but it just has, it denotes the different laws and rules per area, which varies.
Great, thank you. We had another question that was in regards to the bald eagles and their return and whether there was intervention to reduce the DDT that was also causing an issue.
Oh, that's an excellent question. There is nuance there with some federal laws and regulations that that were enacted in order to protect a lot of these species once there was evidence starting to show that it was negatively impacting a lot of these organisms that live in the ocean. And I'm trying to remember what year that happened, when that was passed, that that brought along this prohibitions. And I'm drawing a blank. I can get back to you on that, but there was some law and policy that was passed to be able to protect those marine resources when they when they began documenting the effects of DDT.
Okay. Let's see. We had another question about why the jays haven't spread to other islands, and that but why there are limits to birds. They said, I can see why the foxes are different subspecies, but what limits the birds?
So for the Santa Cruz Island scrub jay, they are such a unique, fascinating species. So Santa Cruz Island, the island of Limu, is the largest island off the coast of California. And when we look at that island and when they study the scrub jays, they have found that that the island scrub jays, they wouldn't consider them long distance travelers. And this question has come up, and I've asked our biologists about it, which is why I'm like, okay, that's one I feel like I kind of know. They live within very specific territories on Santa Cruz Island. For example, a Santa Cruz Island scrub jay that lives, let's say, that calls eastern Santa Cruz Island their home, maybe by Scorpion Anchorage, will likely spend its entire life in that area without ever going to the west side of Santa Cruz Island. Same the other way around. An island scrub jay that lives on the western side of the island, let's say by the Nature Conservancy, plants and animals don't see boundaries like we do, but we do. They will live their whole life out there without ever seeing the east side of the island. They live in these or their boundaries, their territories of the areas where they roam are very small and very limited. And there's question and speculation about, well, did the island scrub jay ever live on Santa Rosa Island? And that, to my knowledge, is still a question that's being asked. I think some people have some very different opinions about that, but that also answers why right now, today, they're only found, or why they're only on Santa Cruz Island, and that's because they don't venture far from where they're born. They stay pretty put.
Great, thank you so much. I have a couple more for you. Someone would like to know what you think the best island area is for scuba diving, and then also rumors of sunken shipwrecks in the area.
Okay. I'm glad that there was a more nuance added to that question. Sometimes people ask, what's my favorite island? And that's such a hard question to answer, but this one. So some of the better, so one of the best islands for scuba diving is going to be around the Anacapa area. That's that island that you see in my background, the one that I showed earlier and also pointed out. There's a lot of scuba charters here off the mainland, and when they take people out to dive, they'll go around this island. One of the reasons is because so one of the reasons is not just like the immensity of the kelp forest, but also the volcanic rock in the area makes it a more vibrant place to experience scuba diving. And it's really beautiful. There are also places around Santa Cruz Island, but as far as popularity, Anacapa is one of the most common one. Also because as you go further out, the conditions get a little bit more rough. And as far as shipwrecks, there's a link in the Channel Islands National Park Service website that talks about the surrounding shipwrecks around some of the islands. So I encourage the participant here to ask to go through our website, and you'll actually see where some of these locations are.
Great. And one more for you. Where is the visitor center located for Channel Islands?
So we have two visitor centers. The main visitor center, which in some ways I consider the hub, is located in Ventura, California. It's located specifically in the Ventura Harbor at the end of Spinnaker Drive. So 1901 Spinnaker Drive in Ventura, California. This is where you have the Channel Islands National Park Visitor Center. We also have an auditorium that shows a film. And if you are curious in seeing that park film, it's also available on our website. It's narrated by Kevin Costner. It's very informative. And we have also a marine life exhibit in our visitor center. For those who are interested, we also have a visitor center in Santa Barbara, and we partner with the city of Santa Barbara and with a few other organizations like the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary to run that visitor center. That one is smaller, but still a great place to learn about the park. As far as people are looking for more tactile exhibits, things like that, I would encourage them to visit the Ventura Harbor Visitor Center.
Great. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I think that's all that we have time for today. So I will pass it back to Emily.
All right. So again, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Jasmine, and thank you, Catherine, for handling the Q&A there. That was really helpful. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate you all showing up today. If you're ever in the area, please, don't hesitate to drop in and visit the California State Library at 914 Capitol Mall in Sacramento, Monday through Friday from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can also send us questions via phone, email, and the Ask a Librarian web form on our homepage, which we linked in the chat. If you missed our previous presentations on the Tule Lake National Monument and Lava Beds National Monument, the recordings are available on the California State Library's YouTube channel, which is linked in the chat. Thank you all again once more for being here today, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.